Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hi, my name's Joe O'Connor, founder and CEO of the Transformative company, and I help veterans, veteran business owners, and those who support veterans become even bigger, better, and bolder versions of themselves. And I do this in three key areas: health, wealth, and mindset. So, pull up a sandbag with Joe. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the week that was, so we'll be looking at the previous weeks from the 28th of May 2022. We're going to be looking at the news of that week, and especially some articles that I found interesting. Then we're going to be moving on to the Standing on the Shoulder of Giants section, where I usually interview someone who is a giant in their field and how they transitioned from the military, or some of them have not necessarily been in the military but really support the military and the ethos and values that we have in the military. And then I move on finally to the section where I share with you some tips on either health, wealth, or mindset, looking at them and usually moving them alternate weeks. So I give you a broad band on what the lessons that I've learned throughout my life. And as I've said, I'm really excited today to bring you that news. First of all, if we look at the week that was, so the previous week to the 28th of May, Saturday, 2022, I've looked at some things that affect the economy, and then there's one or two items in there that I've looked at particularly because it's close to my heart, and it's to do with a military theme to it. So, first of all, the RMT, which is a union for rail workers, they've been threatening to strike as a result of the cutbacks in a number of areas which threaten safety. Now, they've had a pay freeze for the last 3 years, and with no prospect of a pay rise in the future. And this is at a time when inflation was announced last week for April 2022 at 7.8%. More on that later. Suffice to say that strikes aren't going to do the country any good, particularly, especially on the rail, because it will prevent people from going to work and getting around. So it looks like we could be in for a bit of a sticky time in that area, which affects the economy and finances, which is what I specialise in, and I'm going to be giving you some more detail later in the podcast. Something else I found interesting is some years ago, the Ms. Jack Monroe, a single mum with a small boy, started sharing recipes online on blogs, and it was written. This gives you an idea of how long ago it was. It was written on a Nokia E72 phone, so that's quite a few years ago, and it was how to survive on a budget of £10 per week. Shopping for food at £10 a week, and she was feeding herself and her young son, because what happened, she worked for the fire brigade as an administrator, I think, and the relationship with her partner didn't work out that well, and they split up. So she was left as a single mum, wondering what the future held, and was really on a tight budget, and in fact some weeks didn't earn any money. With these blogs that she was doing on how to survive on £10 per week, she was interviewed by the BBC, and Penguin Books picked up the story and run with it, published a book, and she's gone from strength to strength now. So I take my hat off to her, and there is part of the book which goes through the emotional aspects, and she says that it broke her heart when her son said after eating Weetabix, "More mummy, more mummy," and that would be a real tough one, because I'm a father of three, And yeah, I can only imagine, mind you, I've experienced tough times as well, so I can totally appreciate what she's saying. The sad thing is that Tory MP Lee Anderson was on the news recently, and he was on a blog, and it seems, many people have said it seems he lives on a parallel universe, because he criticised her for making money out of the poor. Now, I'm not sure how that works out, because she's helping people on limited budgets. Some people have said, well, what does he know? Because he's on a salary of over 84,000, plus his pension, plus expenses, which is at an average of £157,745, which is a 6% increase on the previous year. So, I find it interesting that he's made these sorts of comments when Ms. Munro, in my opinion, has certainly earned the right to publish a book and help people, because she's been there, done it, seen the film, worn the t-shirt, and she knows what it's like to have a young boy saying more money. So next coming up, which saddened me, and I did say there was some items on the military aspect. Well, no, next we've got the catastrophic failure of the withdrawal from Afghanistan recently. And the former head of the armed forces says to withdraw was strategically illiterate and morally bankrupt. And you can view that full report on the publications.parliaments.uk website. And it goes into some detail of how the withdrawal was not really considered correctly, which I find sad. And lessons will be learned. That classic statement, lessons will be learned. Well, the fact is that people who work in the civil servants' office, members of parliament, the media, journalists who report on things, they come and go. The thing is that each time something has not gone to plan, there are loads of documents in the past that if read, it would give an indication to members of parliament that things have already been learned, or lessons have been there to be learned and not necessarily taken on board. And perhaps they should give more attention to the specialists who know how to pull out of conflict areas and how to do it professionally, rather than it left to the people who look at the budgets, how much money's being spent, and then make recommendations to our government. For instance, the Foreign Affairs Secretary at the time of withdrawal, Sir Philip Barton, was on holidaying while everything was going on. People were hanging on to the bottom of the aircraft, wanting to be taken away. So that's why that saddens me so much, because it is to do with the military, and I think it's important that lessons are learned. And coming up next, I'm covering this briefly, just mentioning it because on the mindset part of today's podcast, I'm going to be going into a little bit more detail on the tragic shooting in America, of the loss of children's lives and the teachers, and, what was the perpetrator thinking? And what are the people who are defending gun laws thinking now? And it's all interesting, and is there self-interest, selfishness? But I'm going to be looking at that in more detail shortly. Some good news that I found is a pharmaceutical company is going to sell drugs to 145 countries at a not-for-profit level, which means that it's only going to be sold at cost. And a pharmaceutical company is Pfizer. So hats off to you, Pfizer, because 1 billion people could benefit from your actions and your intended actions. Of course, there'll be logistical issues, perhaps, and things may not go to plan. But the fact that this has been announced is absolutely brilliant. So well done. Coming on to something else that's linked to the military, in fact, heavily linked to the military, is the disappointing news that 6 soldiers from the Irish Guards and 1 veteran, a former serving member of the Coldstream Guards, have been arrested for drug trafficking. Now, so why do I feel particularly strongly about this? Well, I know that when I was in the military, they were putting down, and it still were, many scientific tests done on human performance, how drugs affect human performance, and all sorts of munitions, chemical, etc. Now, the fact is that I know from when I was seriously injured, I know how drugs can hide the truth. And what do I mean by this? Well, I was in severe pain, right? And with the introduction of morphine, that pain was numbed. In fact, and I'm really pleased it was numbed as well, because I was in a bit of pain. Now, the fact is that some of these drugs now, or all of the drugs that are non-prescribed, give a false sense of security, false sense of elation, can affect judgment, all sorts of things. And for soldiers to be dealing with drugs and trafficking drugs is really terrible, because there's no place for drugs in the military, in my opinion. And the even sadder things for the perpetrators, the 6 soldiers who were arrested, who were in the Irish Guards, they'll be excluded from trooping the colour on the Platinum Jubilee Parade. So it's a real honour to trooping the colour parade, especially at a time when the Platinum Jubilee Parade is for the Queen and commemorates her Jubilee anniversary. And that will remain with these guys for the rest of their lives. So something that may have only taken, a short period of time to get involved with in trafficking drugs, now has affected them for the rest of their lives. And the veteran of the Coldstream Guard, he's been affected as well. So think before you deal in drugs, and think before you take drugs, because in the end, they destroy lives. Something that next, which has panged my interest, is the Prime Minister's behaviour. You know, what was said, what wasn't said, what was done, who had a party, who didn't have a party. And it seems like you're guilty until proven innocent. And what do I mean by this? Well, until proven innocent by changing the rules. So the Prime Minister, it seems, has changed the rules so you no longer need to resign for a particular behaviour, which means that he's been able to fudge the rules to protect himself, or it would seem like that. And there's a whole uproar in Parliament on not only from the opposing parties, actually within his own party, there have been to date 30 letters of votes of confidence, right, or no confidence. And he only needs to receive a further 24, and then he's in big trouble. So what do you think he's going to do? Well, let's watch this going forward, because I think that it's going to be interesting to see whether he resigns or whether he's fired. So let's watch this space. Now moving on to something that is of particular interest to me with financial implications, is something that's being called the Temporary Targeted Energy Profits Levy, or to me and you, it's a windfall tax on the energy companies. And this is a charge levied at the rate of 25% on the profits. It's around 25% extra on the profits, which will raise £5 billion from gas and oil companies. And this is used to help fund the £15 billion grant spending that the government, Rishi Sunak in particular, has announced. And this is for costs on low-income families, and also there will be families of any income, including higher income also. This was on the basis that pressure has been mounting and mounting after Ofgem's recent announcement on energy bill costs, and they're set to rise by a further £800, taking the energy cost to £2,800 a year. So what has been announced to effectively do something about this? Well, there's been a cost of living payment, and that's what it's classed as. The way it's broken down is as follows. 8 million lowest income households will have a one-off payment of around £650. The 8 million pensioner households will have also £300. And the 6 million receiving non-means tested disability benefits will have £150. The aspect where all households will receive is the £400 that's announced for all households, whether you're low income or high income. And this does not need to be paid back. None of it needs to be paid back. And there's arguments, of course, that this could create inflation. Whilst there is an element of truth in that, the IMF says also that if the input of this extra money, the billions to help energy costs, may need to be taken out of the economy in other areas. Now, I'm not sure about that just yet, because the way public confidence is being battered at the minute and the wage increases are not rising as quickly as they may do. Having said that, I talked about the RMT threatening to go on strike. Well, I'm going to cover that a little bit more in a second. So Paul Johnson, the director of the Institute of Fiscal Studies, said that one way that we could help businesses, because they're the sectors that are being left out, you know, the businesses that are employing the people so they can afford the energy bills in the first place. Well, he said that one factor that could be done and one measure is to freeze the increases in the national insurance levy, which was introduced on the 6th of April 2022. Hannah Essex, of the co-executor of the Director of Chamber of Commerce, went further and said that companies have no energy cap on their bills. And one member of the Chamber of Commerce, one of their companies, said that their energy bill had risen from £140,000 to almost £700,000. And that's on top of the raw materials, the transport costs, and the national insurance costs that came in April. So, and possible wage increases as well to keep the staff happy. So there's big concerns about businesses. And the result also of helping the businesses with a possible reduced national insurance contribution, it means that that will help them grow, because businesses want to grow during this period from the pandemic onwards. And also they said that, remembering that many businesses took on debt. They took on bounce back loans and other loans to help them stay in business during the pandemic. And the thing is now, this isn't about how do I get by for business. This is about how do I go on. If you're a business owner, you know, a veteran who owns a business or a supporter of veterans who owns a business, many of you may be thinking, how do I go on with this? And I know it's also been looked at that in the equity markets, markets remain for investment a no man's land and a no person's land, in fact. Do investors buy the dip or continue the hasty retreat? What do I mean by buy the dip? Well, buy the dip means that when the markets go down, savvy investors typically would buy and invest because the prices are lower than they were, or because it's making a dip, that they make a hasty retreat and get out before it goes any lower. So nobody knows exactly what's going on at the minute. And the result, of course, is that Central banks are looking at what they can do as well. How are they going to control for a soft landing? The the US Federal Bank, is taking a hawkish tone, and they're forecasting rises of 0.5% for the next 2 months, which is a steep rise. And that also influences the Bank of England. Even though they do look at our economy separately, it could still influence what they do. So how are they going to proceed with interest rate rises? And that remains to be seen yet. My thought is rates should remain the same, subject to wage demands and unemployment levels and inflationary pressures, plus public uncertainty and a fear of recession. Now, there's many pundits out there, media, journalists, reporters, mentioning stagflation, right? Now, in my book, and when I've looked at how stagflation comes about, only 2 of the factors are in place presently, and that's higher than expected inflation, which in my opinion is being caused temporarily by the sad conflict in Ukraine and the energy price rises, which leads on to commodity price rises and transport rises, logistical rises, which when energy is put back to some form of normality should start to fall again within the next 2 years. The Bank of England is still happy that the 2% target is achievable. Now, the other thing, of course, is that stagflation is caused by high unemployment, and we don't have high unemployment, and then wage increases. So we don't have all 3 together. So stagflation, in my opinion, can be avoided. I think there's quite a good chance of recession, though it remains to be seen just how much. So that was my view on the week that was, and even as positive as I am, we've still got to look at the way that it's going to affect you. And I like to report on the truth, so making sure that I report realistically and objectively to make sure that you get a good feel for what's going on at the present time. How effective do you think being a member of a network, of a group of like-minded people could be for you and your business? Well, that's exactly the reason why I founded the Transformative Business Network Group. And we meet every 2 weeks. A bunch of like-minded people, and the organisation started just after the start of the pandemic, and we've been going for over 2 years now, and my aim, mission in life is to help guide, support business owners who are just like you get bigger, better results in business. And we do this by creating a group that's unique, simple and effective, and supporting veterans, veteran business owners, and those who support veterans. If you fit into that category, then this is a great fit for you, and we'd like to hear from you. So if you follow the link now, and you can find out how to join us for a session to find out what it's all about. And until we meet, thank you and have a brilliant day. Hello and welcome to this edition of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. And today I have with me Winston Wagstaff. Winston, hello Winston, how are you today?
Fine, thank you.
That's brilliant. And we're going to be looking at something that I always find very interesting, and I have done in the past, and it was only in the last 10 years, maybe a bit longer, 15 years, I've recognised just how important this is and what a factor it is. And we do a lot of talking together, don't we? And what we're going to be discussing today and covering today is psychosomatic disorder. Right, so effectively what that is a psychological condition involving the occurrence of physical symptoms, usually lacking a medical explanation. So it may involve excessive thoughts, feelings or concerns about the symptoms, and this effectively affects their ability to function well, the person who is affected by this. Now, we have many chats about various things, and this is something that's deep in your heart, isn't it? And I know one of your mentors, just one of the many, was Dr. Goodwin. Could you just explain a little bit about Dr. Goodwin and tell us how he influenced your life?
Well, he over quite a few years was my mentor, head of our association, and he used to illustrate to us the power of the mind, in that its capabilities were extraordinary. He used to illustrate this by finding a subject, somebody who was quite easily hypnotised, and impressing on the mind that when he awakened them, that there would be a third person in the room.
Right, okay.
So don't think it's strange that I'm not able to communicate with this person, but there will be a third person in this room that is familiar with you, that you're able to talk to and assess. And we will, discuss some subjects and all the rest of it with them. And then when I bring you back to this room after hypnosis, then, we will remove this person. But don't think it's strange that I'm not able to communicate with them. And so he'd then hypnotise one of our subjects and say, I'd like you to talk to this other person. Who is it? And that person was capable of inventing a third person in the room, physically as well as mentally, with a full history, able to touch them physically, able to talk to them, evaluate, anything about them.
Yeah.
The mind is capable of much more than we realise. If they can invent a person with a full history, then surely inventing a minor illness or an ache or pain or it's nothing.
Yeah. And just for you're listening, when you say a physical person in the room, that's not as though it's like beamed out of the sky and there's a person brought in, but to that subject, it seems as though there is a person
you could touch
physically
them.
there.
You could touch them and fully physically be able to be aware of them.
Yeah, which is phenomenal.
Which is phenomenal, absolutely.
And it may sound a bit woo-woo out there. I know that how powerful the mind is, though, isn't it? And the imaginary person, again, we were talking about psychosomatic disorder and how illnesses are caused. I mean, I know more recently, if you don't mind me mentioning, just the same as me after my incident and how I recovered, pain can quite often become more acute or seem like it's more acute at night time, can't it?
Absolutely. Well, you've got much more focus then on the pain, less distractions.
Yeah.
And one of the techniques that we use for pain removal is distractions.
Yeah.
Distract the mind on obvious, more alternative, pleasanter items, say blue sky, the wind blowing on your face, the sea breaking on the seashore. If you focus on those things, then you'll find that it can eliminate the pain completely. Pain is mental. You know, when somebody pokes you in the ribs with the fingers, it's very much the ribs that you feel, but the actual pain is in your mind, it's in your brain. If you can remove the pain in your brain, then the poke in the ribs does not exist.
That's interesting because it's how that poke in the ribs is perceived as it goes through your nervous sensor, and then it's received by your mind, your brain, and then the thought waves go through, and then it presents itself as pain.
As pain.
And I mean, lots of martial arts have been based on being able to control pain. And how it presents itself and presents it in a different way, which is extremely interesting. And you know, as well as psychosomatic disorder being an illness, we talk regularly about how psychosomatic order can become well-being and wellness
Positive.
formulating. Yeah.
I think there is a negative aspect to what we could call mind control, then there is obviously a positive. If you put positives in there, if you focus on a positive response, then you will gain that control. You will gain that positive aspect. You know, there's like any aspect, there's black and there's white, and if you want to focus on the white, which is either a positive or a pain removal or whatever, then that's the aspect that will come. If you want to accept the black, accept the negative, then you will get a negative response. So always look for a positive outcome to whatever aspect the pain or the experience in life is. That you will gain the positive.
Yeah, and we were speaking earlier about how people, viewers, listeners of social media posts and videos, some are really good feedback, and then occasionally you get someone who says a negative about it, like, what are you being so positive about? What do you mean by that? And isn't it interesting that perceptions always different from different people? Because I know when I've been in a room, a group of people, or I'm giving a presentation, and let's say there's 10 people, I'll say, right, I know that there's 11 meetings going on here today. There's the one I think I'm giving, and then there's the one each of you are receiving. And because there's 10 of you, there's 10 versions of what I'm saying and the one I think. So that's 11. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You are your experiences.
Yeah.
You are your outlook on life. If you want a positive outlook on life, a welcoming, a creative outlook on life, then that will be your outcome. If you want a negative outlook, a distracting, restricting outlook of life, then again you will achieve your objective. So you must always, tend towards the positive. Yes, realistic, but positive.
Yeah.
Positive, 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 positive.
Exactly, because as soon as you start to let the negatives come in, it's like a snowball, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Rolling down a hill. Yeah. You'll get more negativity, where if you just break the cycle.
Break that cycle.
And then start thinking positive. And we also covered the topic that if you read one good book, right, and you just decided to read 10 pages a day, or even 1 page a day, one page might not have as big an effect as reading 10 pages. Yeah. The fact is, at least you're starting, because we talked about little improvements make a big difference. And I know when we were putting together this series of podcasts, you detail that as an extremely important factor. Just give me some background on the little improvements that make the big difference.
I'd start off my clients always with what I call a life circle.
Yeah.
Look at different activities within the life, down to earth practical activities, what they eat, how do they sleep, what their interests are, what activities they have in life, do they drink, do they socialise.
Yeah.
All these aspects have an overall effect. If you can get those moving, all those different aspects moving in a positive way rather than in a negative way, then the overall outcome can be so much more impressive. So a lot of littles can make a big difference. So get busy with the littles. Let them eat better, let them sleep better, let them drink better, let them live a more positive life, let them have more social, good social gatherings, whatever. yes, try and eradicate the negatives, but build on the positives.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I know that when I started in business, they said you be mindful of who you socialize with, because your business will be as successful as the top 5 friends that you have. And when I look back at my military career, I recognise that there were different people, different soldiers in different circumstances, and the ones who went on to achieve great results pretty much knocked about, hung around, socialised with people who got great results. And those that didn't get such great results, maybe they spent a bit of time in pokey jail, or they were in front of the OC, officer commanding, quite a bit, tapping the floorboards, then that's what the outcome that they received as well. So I totally get what you mean there. And moving on to something that's happened and really took a hold during the pandemic, with people working from home. And we were talking about this as well, on how that's affected people, because I know from the way I love to network in business, and in fact when I was in the military, we networked regularly, because if you're in a small section of men and women, then you get to know each other, you get to learn to live with each other, whether you have different views, because you've got to get on, right? And the fact is that you either had an arm around your shoulder, egging you on to do better, or sometimes you'd have a pat on the back saying, just check on, what's the issue, how can I help? And I think that's being lost with people working at home. From a commercial point of view, I know that it saves a lot of travelling, so it's eco-friendly. And from a commercial point of view, less fuel, spending money to get to and from work, and maybe in the future, less office space costs, etc. What do you think the downside of that is, though, with people working from home?
I think we are naturally social animals. We need, as you've said, a network. We need connections. We don't get fulfillment purely from our own view of things. We need encouragement. We need other people's opinions. And yes, there can be negative. Yeah. There can be negative sides to it, but there can be also positive and rewarding aspects to socialising. But we are natural animals that need to be in the crowd, need to be in the gathering. Yeah. It's our whole history, isn't it? Look, thousands and thousands of years of being in the collective, and we can't just dismiss it like that. Yes, current situations encourage this individuality, but we're still required to be fully operative, to be fully our true human selves. We need to be part of the herd. We're herd creatures.
Yeah, exactly, and we do. And you were talking about negative feedback as well. I mean, like the feedback sandwich is how to say what went well, what didn't go so well, how you can improve next time. And I think there are people that may not appreciate the feedback sandwich in that respect. The fact is, though, being told, "Oh, good job," when it's not a good job, isn't the way to improve, is it? You need to have constructive feedback that shows that maybe you didn't get it right all the time, if that makes sense.
Yes, a measure of your attainment. But it has to be, even then, if it's brackets criticism, it has to be in a constructive way.
Yeah, of course.
Criticism itself is negative. If you really are aware of somebody criticising you, then you don't feel positive about it, you feel very negative about it. You're actually a step further back than where you were.
So, unless, of course, it's constructive. And that can
well,
look
if
at the
it's
positive.
constructive, then it should move you forward.
Yeah, exactly.
You are where you are, but then you're moving forward with the hope, with the anticipation of improvement.
Yeah.
You've got direction. You need direction. Just a setback is not positive.
No.
You need direction. You need a path, and you can only get that from, in many respects, other people, experienced people, more whole, rounded people.
Yeah.
But you need people.
Exactly. Yeah. And whilst on the subject of us being the herd mentality, and for thousands of years, we go back to prehistoric times, when we did have tribes and we belonged, definite belonging, and membership or a feeling of belonging is important as well, isn't it? How can that manifest itself in a positive way? The overall collection, the overall herd, has merit. We are good people. We create wealth. We create a good environment. We create society and its positives, and so the whole herd benefit. Yeah. And as long as we feel that we're a constructive part of that herd, then we gain the benefit as well. The collective gains the benefit, but the individual, because he is a recognised part of that herd, gains benefit as well, gains credibility. And we all desire credibility. We all desire that tick at the side of the sheet, that reward. Even if it is a pat on the back rather than a kick up the bum. But that's the reward. We get that as a part of the herd if the collective, gets credibility, is making progress, is creating wealth, is whatever its achievements are aimed to be. So part and parcel of the membership is the credibility that you get. Yeah, and also like the carrot and the stick approach. Rewarding someone for doing something well often is, and giving them something to attain and strive for, rather than the stick. If you don't do it, then we're going to penalise it. Because I recognise that from my past, from being a young boy to then in the military, and I think that there's been a societal change, maybe in some respects a little bit too much on the easy side, if that makes sense. Easy is not quite the right word. What is the right word then? If we have goals and attain those goals, then that's credibility. Yeah. You don't get credibility from failure. But we learn from failure, though. But we can learn from failure. We can actually look back and say, X, Y, Z was wrong. I accept those, but that was wrong. Now, if we correct those trends and put them into positive ways, then I gain by it and my herd gains by it. Yeah. We all gain by individual growth, learning, whatever you want to call it, that we all gain by it. Yeah. And so the collective gains by it. We all move forward. Whereas everybody loses by the negative. Yeah. The individual loses and this herd loses. Yeah. The feedback, I take failure as feedback, because it gives you feedback on how to get better, improve, because I know so many people who, when they fail, they just give up and they don't do it again and they don't keep going. And what experience have you had with people who you've worked with that just give up because of failure? You've got to
let them analyse many things on their from their perspective. Now, if they really had quite dramatic negative experiences, you've got a problem. You've got to lift that negativity away first, even by over positives in some respect. But clear the negative feedback until you can have true evaluation. They can measure where things went wrong in a valuable way, not in a totally negative way. But that takes some doing. That's not easily achieved. But you have to move people forwards. You must not let them dwell too much on in the depth of their despair. No. And let them come to a more positive realisation, and then move them on with positives, with encouragement, with targets. Give them a target, give them something to achieve, and because they achieve even small steps, they're moving forwards. Again, lots of littles make a big difference.
So you start here at point A.
Yeah.
You want to get to point B, and in between there's lots of little steps.
Lots of little steps.
To get there.
Yeah.
And coming back to the point I made before about how things may seem to have got easier, because I've had people say that to me. I'm talking more about the way that people process failure and allow it to just hold them back from getting it, or accept the failure as the final result, and then give up, because it's easier to give up than it is to move forward.
To move forward.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolute sense. As positive as we can be, and we've always got to be trying to be positive, it's not easy. No, it's not easy when you're down in that depth. It takes some courage and encouragement and support. Yeah. That's the other thing. You need support. You need encouragement. You need somebody who can still see the big picture. Yeah. Not the depth. In the darkness. You need somebody who can still see the big picture and can point you with help and encouragement towards the light. Yeah. But the light is still there. It's attainable. But yes, it takes some encouragement. It does take some courage and support to get you on that route. But one step is a step away from despair towards reward.
And that's why that's exactly the reason why I run the Transformative Business Network group and the Mastermind group, because I just feel that the collective is so much more powerful. It's so much better to be in a group of people, albeit it's online, but we now we get to meet face to face as well. And the fact is that just to have someone to chat to, it's great that we have chats. It's great that the giants that I get to meet and chat to and share beliefs, values, and conversations with is just fantastic. And I think that in the age of sitting in front of a TV screen, playing with a controller, and maybe not socialising with other human beings in the same way that we used to when we were young, is something that needs to be looked at, really, doesn't it?
I think it needs balance.
Yeah.
Just on its own, it can be perfectly positive in its input, but we are, at the end of the day, brackets humans. Yeah. We do need contact. We do need other human beings. We need to touch and feel and get rewards. That's our total history, of humanity. Is this movement forwards towards reward, and it's just part of our makeup. We are less, let's put it that way, we are less without it, so let's go for more with it.
More socialising, more interaction, more positivity,
more communication.
And of course, when negativity hits, that's okay too.
Yes.
So long as you have the support.
No, you can learn from the negatives. And often you learn more from the negatives than you do from the positives, as long as it's constructive. But it is always moving forward,
Brilliant.
Always grabbing the opportunity, always looking by analysing the situation towards the positive.
Good. Yeah. So what I've got from today, when I'm just giving feedback on what I've received from today's chat, and the takeaway I've got, if there's anything that you pick up on, again, please comment further. But from a psychosomatic point of view, you can be positively affected as well as negatively affected, because a lot of people, especially when pain gets acute at night time, focus on all the things that are wrong, whereas if you take the little steps to get better, it can improve the situation. And I know that there are techniques that you can use to overcome the pain and distract the pain, just the same as the Middle East, the martial arts people did, Asia, and the techniques that were brought from there. And it was interesting that your mentor used to, when working with his clients, and I know you're a big believer in it, would bring another person, an imaginary person, into the room that could converse with the subject to help them get through the problems. And the top tip for recovery is little improvements, and often, because moving one step towards recovery and doing that consistently will get you there in the end. Working from home is a great from a commercial point of view and a time point of view. It's also important to remember you still need to socialise with human beings, because we are social people.
Animals,
yeah. And because we like a sense of membership and a sense of belonging, don't we? So what's the one thing, the one tip that you would say on the subject of membership, belonging, having someone to relate to, and the psychosomatic aspects of illness and wellness? What's the one thing that you'd like people to take away today?
Sounds strange, but to breathe out and relax and think positive. That's a tiny little step forwards.
Right.
But it's a step forwards.
Well, just so, because obviously you need to breathe out in before you breathe out, in case you're wondering that. Right. So just give us a quick demonstration of what you do when you're working with a client, because I know you use many of the techniques like I do.
Well, it's there's many names for it, but it's yoga breathing. It's this deep breathing within the solar plexus. Yeah. But take a just jolly big breath in.
So I'll tell you what, I'll be your subject. I'll do it.
Take a breath in from right from the tummy, right from here. Feel it there. Yeah. Come in. And then breathe it out through the mouth, just purely through the mouth, slowly and deeply until you're almost gagging. Right? Do that again. Deep breath in. But this time, when you release it, say peace and calm throughout the whole of my body and the whole of my mind. Peace and calm. And you'll probably find that you have a little shiver run through your body. Just a little shiver running up your body. If not, practice it a few times. But you bring in peace and calm rather than tension and alertness to your body. Your body is probably working quite hard, sat in that chair, tense, feeling your shoulders perhaps aching, your hands gripping, your legs supporting you. And this shouldn't be so. You should be relaxed. You should be at peace. And you can work at 100% not at 75.
That's good, excellent. So I remember when I was learning about neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy, we were taught similar process, but it was someone who had been taught in the Hawaiian Huna.
Yes. The meditative
process. Yeah. So, and they called it heart breathing. So yoga breathing. It's pretty much all the same. Yeah. It's just got different names. Yeah. And I think that the breath in is important to fill your lungs, and then usually the breath out, the exhalation, is twice as long as the breath in to give you time to process.
You see, it's a technique that's absolutely built into your body's breathing.
Yeah.
It's pretty so used to breathing.
It's pretty
that if you can once harness that in a positive way, then it's such a wonderful control mechanism, in that you're doing it millions and billions of times throughout your life. So if you get it under control and use it in a positive way, how beneficial it can be. You've turned it round from just another action, a normal functioning action, to something positive. It's a positive. You're breathing out. Needs a bit of practice. Needs a bit of mental control as well as physical. And we do that in quite a few different ways. Yeah. Some people call it a little bit of whimsy. You can be out there somewhere in a beautiful place, the sun's shining down, the breeze is blowing, perhaps the sea is breaking on the seashore, the countryside is all around you, birds whistling. You're conjuring up lots and lots of positives, which you're absorbing in your mind. You create them. There's no room for negatives.
No.
There's no room for the pain. There's no room for the ache, or the sciatic pain, whatever. In that you're replacing a negative with a positive. Yeah. And your mind, will be encouraged always to go for the positive. And you gain the benefit.
Yeah. That's so important. And I think what we'll do is at some point I'll add a relaxation recording. So you at home can take all the time you want to just go through a meditation process which will help you relax. And I know you said breathing is important, and I know just how important it is, because without it, you're not going to be around for long.
Not for long.
And if you hold your breath for as long as you want, then you've got to breathe at some point. And I just did a quick calculation, right? There's based on the fact that if you breathe one time every second, right? I know that's a bit fast for some people. Then that's 60 times a minute, 600 times in 10 minutes, 3,600 times every hour. In 10 hours, 36,000 times. So when you say you breathe in quite a few million times, or billion or trillion during your life, that's how important breathing is. So my takeaway is that just be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. So always use psychosomatic wellness to help you. Do your best to use a distraction technique from pain. Get yourself a good network, a good mentor or coach that can support you. And on the basis of working from home, make sure that you still socialise. So, and that one thing again from you was the breathing. That's the one tip. That's the great tip.
Yes, it's such a natural, everyday function that if you harness it, for benefit rather than just for body function, then you're going to move forwards. You can't go anywhere but forwards.
That's correct. Well, Winston, absolute pleasure to be speaking to you again. And we'll be doing some more along this line. But until we meet again, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers. Hi, my name is Joe O'Connor, founder and CEO of the Transformative Company, and I help veterans, veteran business owners, people who support veterans become bigger, better and bolder versions of themselves. And I do this in three particular areas: health, wealth and mindset. Your success matters is a phrase I use often with my clients, and how you can change your life. And what I wanted to do was come up with some sort of guide to help people who are just like you realise that your success matters and that you can change your life. So I wrote a book called Think You Can, Know You Can, because I think you've got to start with see how I go. I think you've got to start with the fact that thinking you can do something and practicing it in your mind, and then once you do it enough times, then you can come to a stage where you know you can. And in this book, it gives a real easy guide, which is simple, effective, and unique on how you can get from where you are now to where you want to be. So all you're going to do to get this book is scan the QR code down, and that will take you to somewhere where you can download the book for free, no obligation, and it's my gift from me to you. So change your life, your success matters, and have a brilliant day. Thank you. And now we come to the section for the health, wealth and mindset. And this episode, I'd like to concentrate on the mindset aspect of the trilogy. Now, today I just felt compelled to share my thoughts with you on the negative emotions that are quite often generated from various acts by human beings. If we look at scarcity, fear, selfishness, anger, greed, supremacy, and the effects they can have on an individual or indeed a group, because we've talked about the herd mentality and how once a group of people get together, they can do things that they wouldn't necessarily do on their own. And conversely, people who are influenced by various social media, YouTube, lots of things where people are just pumping information into individuals, and if they take it all in without having mentors, coaches, or a network of people who can give them some sound, good advice, they can maybe take the wrong step. So, with the recent travesty of Uvalde in Texas, America, the shooting of 19 innocent children and their two school teachers, and the grandmother of the perpetrator that fired the shots before he moved on to the school. Now, there's lots of things going on after that with accusations of the police not acting quickly enough. I know that the after effect of that is quite shocking, really. And in fact, one of the teachers, the husband, died of grief, a heart attack, only a few days afterwards. So, at the beginning of this section, I've mentioned fear, anger, selfishness. What is the fear? Well, people in America, especially Texas, where the event happened, say that they're entitled to carry a gun because of the fear of being mugged. The selfishness is that they want to carry a gun come what may, and this is what I've been in discussions with people, and this is what they're telling me their opinions are. The greed from the gun manufacturers, it could be said, because of the amount of money, which I'll come on to shortly, that is made. The sadness by the individuals who are left with the sad loss of life. The supremacy by those who want to control people and their people's need for a gun because there's lots of money. In fact, it's a multi-billion-pound business. And if we look at it in more detail, the shooting and murder of the 19 children, their teachers, and the grandmother leaves a sense of immense loss and hopelessness to many. What can they do to control this? The Vice President, Pamela Harris, has said enough is enough. So what does that mean? The New York mayor wants to raise the age from 18 to 21, so you cannot buy a gun before the age of 21. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott says that rising mental health issue is the problem, not gun sales. So if rising mental health is the issue, how come people with such conditions can buy a gun easily? Then we move on to China's opinion, because China has also given their take on it and said America is committing human rights offences and abuse of human rights. And speaking at the National Rifles Association the weekend just gone, the last weekend in May, Trump was heard to say that people have the right to protect themselves and teachers should be armed. Right, so that's an interesting point of view. And as I say, the gun industry is powerful and always challenges law. Why? Because $19 billion per year is the income that's earned. Now, call me old-fashioned, right? If you fight fire with fire, and by the way, when I was in the engineers, we did some training on how to fight forest fires, and we had to deal with a few things when I was in, because I remember there was some interesting times when I was in, as is now. And if you fight fire with fire, because obviously you can cause a fire break and see if you can blow one fire into another where it burns out. The thing is, if you do it wrong or the wind changes, you get burned. And a lot of trees are lost. To stop a fire, another option and another technique is to cut the trees down and create a natural fire break and cut it around where the fire could move to. So, my question is, what do you need a semi-automatic assault rifle for? I know, like many of you who served in the military, I know the damage that a semi-automatic rifle can do. And what's the point of just making that available to people with mental illness, as the Texas governor says? So what if you could even get a domestic nuclear weapon? Who would subscribe to that so they have the right to say, mine is bigger than your weapon, so don't come near me? Now, call me facetious, maybe. The thing is that there will always be someone who wants to get the biggest weapon. And on the other hand, of course, Henry Ford, you'll remember, with the Model T, said any customer can have a car painted any colour that he wants, so long as it's black. Right, so what about making only one type of gun available? Whether that's a single shot, multiple shot revolver, which means that you can still have the right to protect yourself under a more controlled manner. These are conversations that I'm having with various people in places of influence, and so don't shoot the messenger. I'm just giving a challenging question so you can consider what your answers are. And then, before casting your vote, consider the sad loss of the many lives, the children, their parents, their grandparents, their friends, and the many generations affected by the senseless killings. As I mentioned earlier, the husband of one of the teachers died only a few days later of a broken heart, grief, because of that loss. How many more tragedies like this need to happen? If we look over the decades to the Columbine Massacre on the 20th of April 1999, or the Sandy Hook School event on the 14th of December 2012, and the many others, it's littered with the loss of life. So, what do you think we should do to change this? What can you, as an American, you are listening now, as an American, what can you do? As a Brit, what can you do? surely we have the opportunity to come together and consider the law and how effective it is. So that's my mindset take for this week. Isn't it interesting how the mind can justify arguments for and against? Because if you get in a group of people that share the same belief, whether that be that guns should be banned immediately, there should be no more sales of guns, or in fact that you believe that it's everyone's right to carry a gun in America, then your mind and process will go through a particular thought process to bring you to the result that you want. And what I want to do now is I want you to replay this and think about the questions that I've asked you and challenge the way you think. Because, as I understand it, the NRA, National Rifle Association, was founded in 1871. That's quite a while ago. And when it was founded, it was for marksmanship principles and worthy attributes like that. Now, exactly what is it for? I'd love your comments. Give me feedback. Send me your feedback. And if you found this interesting, give me a like on the YouTube. I'd love to get your feedback. And remember that the Transformer process goes through a whole system. And I'd like to touch base with you regularly every week so you can get more on the week that was, standing on the shoulder of giants, and then my take on the health, wealth, and mindset section. So that's it for this week. Pull up a sandbag with Joe. You've been brilliant. I'm Joe O'Connor, and have a brilliant day. Thank you.